Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 decks in the current metagame with some honorable mentions. And this is Twilight Masquerade metagame, which is pretty interesting. And well, I'm not usually someone to care much about in-person tournaments. There is the tournament, the NAIC tournament, the North American International Championship, and there is actually a fantasy draft thing that I believe I will be posting a video about later today. It's kind of cool. There's an error in it. It is not necessarily my error, but keep that in mind. The Pokemon Company, well, they messed up. It wasn't working very well. It felt a bit like playing live, but sorry about that. I don't know. I don't really know if I should be apologizing for that, but just keep that in mind. There's like a damage number thing, and it just doesn't work right. But it's been fixed as well as what I've heard. But anyway, let's just hop right in because that tournament will be the first major in-person tournament in I don't know, it depends what like you consider. There have certainly been tournaments. I mean, we're looking at tournament results from Twilight Masquerade tournaments, but there's the NAIC tournament, which Pokemon themselves like a lot. So there's the fantasy thing. So check that out. Subscribe to see that later today as well, assuming that we're in somewhat similar time zones. Anyways, then we also have the top 10, what we're here for, right? So I do have a few honorable mentions first, but it's going to be the Raging Bull Ogerpon deck. I've talked about this in the past. I made a tier list, and I wasn't a big fan of it. And then since the tier list, I played it. It's felt a little luck based in the late game. I've certainly been like having a solid like win rate with it, higher than I was expecting. But the big issue is, well, there's two. One, the lack of gusting. This list is interesting. It runs two caps of boss's orders, but if you play Professor Sada's Vitality, you can't play boss's orders, and so you need to be careful with that. Like very, very careful. And then on top of that, you also um, you'll struggle to draw the cards you need after you've been like Ionoed or whatever down to a low hand size. I think if Unfair Stamp gets played more, where it's right now Unfair Stamp's being played surprisingly little. I don't know if it's in any of the decks I'm showing you today, to be honest. Keep in mind these lists are just the top list from Limitless, so you can certainly make changes to them as you like. But um, yeah, it's pretty bad against Unfair Stamp. It's not a terrible deck though. It has like the best turn ones in the game. I mean, it just hits an absurd amount of damage and also is relatively consistent turn one. And yeah, so turn ones are just insane for this deck because of Squawkabilly EX, which is really important for your draw engine, but is pretty much your entire draw engine. Ogerpon will be drawing you some cards throughout the course of the game, but that's only when you're already set up. So I mean, it's good and it is important, but it's not bailing you out of bad scenarios. And then Radiant Greninja, kind of similar idea. You do need the energies in hand to be able to use it. So, if you get Ionode or whatever to a hand without any energies, that's pretty rough. The list plays 15 energies, which is wait, no, sorry, it plays 14 energies. And the list can play different amounts. And then it plays 3 copies of energy retrieval. There also isn't any copy aren't any super rods. Some lists run super rod. Or different forms of recovery, but generally you got a bunch of energy and a bunch of ways to get energy, so it's not like that inconsistent. And then 4 Earthen Vessel, right? So if you're Iono to a small hand, there's a good chance you will be able to get Earthen Vessel or some way to draw a few extra cards off of the Ogerpon or Radiant Greninja, but it's still a weaker engine. And then some of the decks we'll talk about later, which have stronger ones. Speaking of other decks, that's a terrible transition for a terrible deck. This is Snorlax. It's just not fun, to be honest, is the biggest thing. It's not that bad. You focus on block, the ability which stops your opponent's active from retreating, and accompanying flute to trap stuff, as well as Eric's invitation, and your opponent just playing them or starring them and getting unlucky and stuff like that. I would play Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX as well, the fighting one. I think that's good in a deck like this. But outside of that, there's not really too much to say about the deck. Oh, actually, there's a lot to say, but in this video, there's not too much to say about the deck. It's kind of boring. It's fine. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not that good. And the honorable mentions aren't really in any particular order, but the top 10 is the Snorlax deck. I mean, it's whatever. I've been seeing it a ton. It's one of the most played decks in the game right now in the online tournaments, which doesn't necessarily reflect how played it is on like ladder, but I've been seeing it much more than I like. It's slow. It's a control slash stall deck, but it's one of the slower decks. It's more control, by the way, than stall. Although it does have stall elements with Penny and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a deck that's, in my opinion, directly better than it, assuming you are able to pilot it well. Spoilers, it's the control deck. It's the one Pidgeot, which isn't a very well defined deck, but that deck, in my opinion, is almost directly better. It's better in most scenarios, assuming that you have some idea what you're doing. For newer players, this deck would probably be better though, but there's not a lot of growth you can get with the deck, so you'll honestly peak, or not peak, but get pretty close to peaking with this deck pretty early because there's a lot of luck in it, more than probably any other deck in the game, because the draw engine's kind of weird. I mean, comparing it to the Raging Bolt Ogre Pond deck, they're obviously in what they're doing is very different. Their like damage and stuff is different, but they're both like relatively weak and unexplosive engines outside of like early turns, and then they both also can I don't know, they can just kind of like have luck based issues. They're certainly not all luck based or anything like that, but they're more luck than pretty much any other deck on this list, which is partially why it is lower. But again, the top 10 is very solid, but the decks just offered are fine as well. Next, this deck is Reggie Draco V-Star, which is honestly, this is not the deck that I thought it was. I just pulled up the first Reggie Draco V-Star list. Most lists run the Ogre Pond, which I think is really good. This list does not run Ogre Pond. This one runs Gardenia's Vigor, so I'm actually going to go change it. I was like confused when I was looking at it, but let's go ahead and find ourselves a list with Ogre Pond. And there we go. Here's a more normal list. Because Raging Bolt EX, this is able to utilize Raging Bolt EX. It's nowhere near as explosive as the Raging Bolt EX focused deck. However, you have Dragapult EX, Northern EX, Hisuian Goodra V-Star, and potentially other options. This gives you a lot more versatility into a lot of different matchups. We talk about the Raging Bolt deck. You can use or the Raging Bolt EX focused deck with probably the Ogre Pond EX, which plays somewhat similarly to this in terms of its goals. This deck is slower, but has it doesn't discard all your energy every time you attack, which is really good. And does have a bit more of an engine, but it's not that much more. But outside of that, you do have Northern EX, which can wall Raging Bolt, and they can't really do much about it, to be honest. And then you can use Dragapult EX, which is really good at 200 to the active, 6 damage counters anywhere you want on your opponent's bench. You also have Hisuian Goodra V-Star. So you have that high damage output potential of Raging Bolt EX, and you have Dragapult EX and Hisuian Goodra V-Star and Northern EX just for other scenarios. And they're all really good. I think the Judoka V-Star deck is finally in an actually really solid place. And the Teal Flame Masquerade upon EX accelerates energy. It's all right. It's not the most consistent. As I was staying with the Raging Bolt deck, I could easily see switching these two, but yeah, Regidraco V-Star, in my opinion, has that. I mean, it definitely has that higher versatility, but in my opinion, that higher versatility outweighs the slower start because you're able to come back and really just annoy your opponent. A lot of matches, if they are running all basics, you can wall them with Northern, as I was saying with the Raging Ball deck. They're running just all special energy in a way that they just have to attach it, or if they are kind of putting themselves into situations where they have to attach special energy, you can use Noivern. If they are just not doing a ton of damage, you can use Gudra. If they are vulnerable to bench damage, you can use Dragapult. I will say Dragapult is good in the deck. It's not like absurdly broken. A lot of lists are running 2 Dragapults and one of all their other attackers. That's not always exactly what you're looking to do. It's not always perfect, but it's all right. And the big thing is that the Ogre Pontiac's energy switch combo is honestly really consistent. It's not like the most consistent deck in the game, but it's pretty good. And one thing you'll notice with these decks, some of them are less consistent, but I do think that the payoff is worth it. And as I said, I played this on video, I think, and it was pretty good. To be honest, it was far better than I was expecting, and it just I think it's a top deck. It's seeing some play. It's seeing a good chunk of play, not the highest level of play, or the highest play rate, but it's still being really solid. And you can also actually play supporters. Unlike the Raging Vault deck, you don't have to play Sada's Vitality every turn, which is nice. And I don't know, there's not too much to say about the deck. Vijayika V-Star power, there we go, is really good. It can recover cards and can draw. It's not like amazing in the fact, I mean, it's not amazing as your only engine, but it's still pretty good. And I do believe this is probably the best use of Ogre Pawn. And it's certainly the best Regidraco's been since Regidraco V-Star's been since it came out, because it hasn't been super good since it came out. The other list pulled up was Gardenia's list, but I think that's much less consistent. Kind of you run into that issue where you need to play the supporter every turn instead of Professor Sada's Vitality, which is better than Gardenia's Vigor. You need to play Gardenia's Vigor, which will cause some problems if you've ever played with it. But Yeah, Richard Draco V-Star, really solid deck. I mean, it's the number 10 deck, right? It's not amazing. The reason I'm saying so much good stuff about it was because I think it's viewed pretty negatively, but it actually is a real contender, which is pretty fun. It's definitely a fun deck to play as well. Next up, number 9, we got Blissey EX. Um, and I think Blissey EX is, and I'll actually talk about the next deck as well, which is going to be Arceus V-Star with the Giratina V-Star. These decks are kind of similar. I mean, Blissey EX and Arceus V-Star are pretty similar Pokemon, high HP colors Pokemon, except you can run Sharon's Care and healing in Arceus, but you don't always. Blissey EX is very much focused around healing. You use Sharon's Care to heal up all your damage, and then you just kind of loop this over and over again. It's just a really solid deck for tanking. I mean, it's the tanking deck, right? It just is focused around that. Of course, you won't always be able to do that, and that is an issue. Also, a few things I want to say about the deck. I don't think it's being used to its full potential yet, but I don't know how to do that either. The energy counts are kind of weird. Darkness is really good with Monkey Dory. It allows you to like heal and move damage and do extra damage, which is nice. But its value, it's good, but it's not like insanely high. And the Hoopa EX, it's okay. I'm not a massive fan of it. I've just never been a massive fan of Hoopa EX in really any deck, to be honest. But it is fine and blissy. It's weird. It's kind of also a weakness hitter because the fighting Pokemon with the fighting energy isn't a weakness hitter because it just doesn't have weakness with its attack. But Ogerpon EX, the fighting one, is so good in my opinion as well. It's not insane in the current meta, but it's pretty solid and yeah, it's pretty nice. And again, as I said with like Gardenias, Masadas, with any deck, you need to play a supporter every turn. Sharon's Care, kind of an issue. You don't have to play Sharon's Care every single turn, certainly, but if you're playing Sharon's Care, you're not playing another supporter, so losing out on the access to another supporter is a bit of an issue, and you kind of have consistency issues, though it's not that bad. It's in a stage 1 with 2 energies, and you can really just kind of be free with your energy attachments because you have Team Turbo Energize, and you have Double Turbo, and you can move energies around. So it's not that bad, but something you have to be a little bit careful of. Overall, I think it's a solid deck. It's a pretty fun deck, and I'm looking forward to playing Blissey EX more. I think the Monkey Door is pretty good. It's extra damage and has some almost spread elements to it, which is really nice. In terms of tanking, it can get one-shotted if you're up against like the Ogerpon Raging Bolt deck. Then you can get one-shotted if you're up against a few other decks that aren't like Chimpao, you can get one shotted. There are certain decks that like one shot you, right? But if you're getting one shotted, that's not good. But if you're not getting one shotted, it's a really broken deck. And I mean, it's probably the best deck in the game if it's not getting one shotted because it just heals forever, or not forever, but it heals enough that you're gonna win. And yeah, again, really no draw engine outside of return draw till 6 with your attack, which is super weird. As it's an attack, so it's not really a true draw engine in the normal sense, but it's all right. Also, I will mention Greninja EX. I don't think that deck's super good. I think it has some potential. I don't think it's a terrible deck, but also relying on your attack to like kind of have an engine with certain builds, not with every build, but Bliss EX, a really solid deck. Not an amazing deck, but it's lower in the top 10 for a reason, but still pretty solid. And Arceus V-Star does generally play more of an engine, including mainly throwing 3/3 Barrel and a Skwovet. Arceus V-Star is very solid, very consistent. You got Starbreath, V-Star Power. You also have Giratina V-Star, great raw stats. And yeah, you have Iron Leaves EX, which is nice against Charizard, which is still a pretty good deck. And yeah, not really too much to say about the deck. To be honest, it's just a solid deck. I've said this for a long time, but it's just a deck that it does what it does, and you're not really stopping it, but you can just outpower it with certain decks. No, it's not. I don't know. I don't know if it deserves to be this high, and it's not even that high. But if you're just against, if I had to choose a deck, and I have literally no idea what my opponent's playing, they could be playing anything, and there's an equal chance that they're playing like some really high level meta deck or some just like weird random deck. This is probably the deck I'd choose because it's able to deal with weird stuff really easily. It just brushes it off, and then if you're up against, really good decks, it should be able to like keep the pace. You have disruption as well. So even if you are against specifically the Raging Bull deck, which is just really highly played right now, then although it is falling down some, but it is really highly played, and so you can just disrupt them and put them in an awkward spot. You do have some healing, which is nice, and some lists run more healing. You can also use Shred to hit through Mimikyu, which is nice. a lot of lists struggle against certain techs, and yeah, you have Shred, which will probably deal with them. So not too much to say about the deck other than it's just really solid. Next up, I got Lost Zone Box. I think this deck is this list I have here is just super generic. Essentially, no new cards. There's one new card, but Vladimir Saloon EX is that new card. It's just really good. It's kind of like Radiant Charizard. It's a little different. I mean, it's an EX, but it's just a super good card. And yeah, I mean, Blood Morsel and EX just really good. So you're able to use that. You're able to use other just really solid attackers, and it's just a good deck. I said that the Cornerstone Mask Urpon EX is really solid, and I also think that it is. And then you also have, I mean, you just have a lot of different attacking options, right? And they're all pretty good. I think the deck needs to get figured out, and it'll take some time. Hopefully, it gets figured out a bit more. I mean, I know some people are not fans of Lost Zone, but I hope that it gets figured out later down the line because in the past, people kind of played with like a pretty, my opinion, boring list of Lost Zone, and which I guess was all right. It certainly wasn't like that bad, but it felt like there was more potential. I honestly haven't played Lost Zone too much recently since the actually rotation, but it's still a really solid deck and it has a lot of different options, especially with Twilight Masquerade introducing more EXs, which is really good for this set, especially the Ursaluna, which is just really good. Not too much to say about the deck. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to say. You could say about Lost Zone, weaker early games, potentially risky against disruption, but not terrible. You do have the Comfy Engine, which is pretty good. There's some depth, but it doesn't matter too much. So let's move on to the next deck, which is Lugia V-Star with Legacy Energy and Chinchino. And this deck, in my opinion, is really solid. It's also a deck I don't like to play. Hitting our gaps into play is a little bit risky, but you can use Carmen, you can use, of course, Legacy Energy, and you can use Wellspring Mask upon EX as well, which is not in this list for whatever reason, but it's a really solid deck. And Blood Moon Ursaluna EX, just a really good card. And yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of really good cards you can use in the deck. It's not the most consistent at setting up, but once you're set up, there's not really much your opponent can do about it unless you're able to just completely wipe out your red caps, which that they probably won't be able to do, especially before you probably power up probably like two attackers, and those attackers are going to be like one-shotting all your opponent's Pokemon and just kind of difficult to deal with. So even if you do lose your Arcapses early on, it's not like you're just completely out or anything. Legacy Energy gives you more depth as well with the deck, as you can use I mean attackers that aren't just colorless, which is really nice. And yeah, it's really good. I think it has the consistency issues, but if it's working, it's probably the best deck in format, but it's just not always working. Next up, we got ourselves Charizard EX. This is at number 5, so it's fallen off a lot with rotation. It's just not so good against Dragapult. It's not like terrible, but it's not great. You could play them together as well. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of them together, but I know it's not a bad deck. But yeah, you got all this stuff. If you want to learn more about Charizard EX, you can just check out really any content from like a month or two ago. From really any content creator, any Pokemon TCG content creator, because well, they'll probably all be talking about it. It's any like meta talk. It's just Charizard is like really was really the best deck. It isn't, I mean, lost anything. It's not like rotation happened, but yeah, it's just not really grown a lot with the new set either. I don't think this list runs any new cards, so it could be doing better, but it's certainly not in a bad spot at all either. It's a pretty good deck. I mean, Charizard DX just a really solid Pokemon. Next, number 4 is Giratina V-Star Lost Zone. Um, Yeah, I mean, just another really solid deck. Giratina V start really good. This deck makes the best use of it, and yeah, just really solid. You got Cramorant, Sableye, Mirage Gates, Giratina V stars. Yeah, not too much to say about the deck, other than it's just really solid. And this list is so simple, it's kind of crazy, but um, yeah, I think it's just a really solid deck. Again, you have certain loss issues getting Ionoed late game and whatever, but it's not that bad to be honest. Um, Oh, it's not great. You need to play your like switch cards and stuff, but whatever, it's fine. Next up, number 3. That's right, React Control. This is control list, I believe from All Blitz, although it could be wrong. I don't know, but whatever. The big thing that matters is one, you got Blood Moon Saloon EX. I mean, that's the big thing. You can run Legacy Energy. I actually do like Legacy Energy. I haven't played much Control in the new format, but I think Legacy Energy is pretty good. And there's the Water Ogre Pon EX, which is okay. Yeah, I mean, I just think this deck's better than the Snorlax control. Much harder to play. You need to, I mean, there's a lot more cards. It's not fitting on the screen. But there are a lot of different things you can do and a lot of things you kind of need to do to be able to win. It's a really tricky deck, but it's a pretty fun deck to play. And it's actually not that bad to play against, assuming you like kind of know what you're doing. And there are games that are just not fun with the deck, but there are games that aren't fun with any deck. So I think it's moderately fun to play with. It has pretty good matchups as well. I think I'm not super familiar with the matchups, but you do have access to walls, and you'll probably be putting those in to sup your opponent. And yeah, not too much to say about the deck. In this video, there's a lot of depth, but yeah, it's just a really solid deck if you're able to play it well. As with Charizard DX, I didn't really say that, but Charizard DX, if you're able to play it well and build it well, it's really good. Because I think Pidgeot EX is really good. Next up, we come to Gardevoir, which is the number 2 deck for me. I don't know, Monkey Dory is like pretty alright. It moves damage, it heals, and it kind of does extra damage. It's pretty nice, and you can also run Fezandipiti, which is an attacker. It's kind of weird. Its ability says like you survive half the time with a coin flip, which is kind of silly. But Unfair Stamp here is really good. I think it's a really solid ace spec. I don't think it's like super broken, but it's pretty good, especially with a good few decks being vulnerable to disruption, and some being like horrible against it. So Unfair Stamp just really solid, and you also have Dragapult's a really good deck. Greninja's seeing a ton of play as well, and being able to defend against spread is really really good. Monkey Dory and Cresselia are both so good against it. You need to be very careful with Screamtail and Drifloon and really any of your attackers, but mostly those two because you're going to be really close to being knocked out. It's kind of the point of the deck, but it is still super risky. Yeah, I think that's really all to say about the deck. I mean, just a really solid deck and really good against spread, which is actually just super good right now because let's just move into the number 1 deck. Y'all know what it is. It's Dragapult. The Dragapult, or maybe not all of you did, but Dragapult EX is, I mean, it's obviously, it's really good. If you are familiar with Charizard EX from the past format, Seichu EX, really difficult to knock out. I mean, it's just really good. The reason it's better than Charizard EX, in my opinion, is that, I mean, it just does more damage across the board. Literally, it just spreads it around, which is nice in this scenario. The lack of single target damage can be an issue, but it's not that big of an issue, especially if you're able to punish your opponent's weaker starts. This deck has a pretty solid time against Iono as well, because you do have the Dracloaks and the Pidgeots. Of course, you will have certain issues setting up sometimes, and you need to be able to use tech options well and stuff like that. But you can put in different Pokemon. You can put in a Radiant Pokemon. This list doesn't run any, but Radiant Charizard could be nice if you're, for example, worried about the Raging Ball, like the Raging Bolt deck. I guess any Raging Bolt deck, because it will prize trade favorably with it versus Dragapult prize trades okay with it. Let's say it's not great. It's kind of bad, but also, you can hit them with an Iona, right? So just a really solid deck. I think it's really good. And Pidgeot EX gives you the option to play a lot of text. The list runs almost no text, but it runs I don't know, it runs like Mela, Neo, Apprenti, which I guess are like text, but not really many text. And Hawlucha as well in Ranify. But I think the deck has a long ways to go as well, but I think it's really good right now. And within a few weeks, I think we will see it start to rise to the top, not necessarily in win rate, but in play rate and wins. It'll just like win a lot because it's really good. But anyway, that's my top 10. Of course, it's all my opinion, but I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking and subscribing. I don't remember what percentage of my audience isn't subscribed, but it's high. I'm sure you know that. So subscribe because I'll be doing more content, talking about more just the Pokemon TCG and playing the Pokemon TCG more. But I really enjoyed, and I hope you did too. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.